This is Sarah, Erin,
Brianna,
and Joe, and thanks for popping by MeaningFueled, where we take your problems of practice, your pops, and have a meaningful discussion about where they come from and where do we go from there.
We are 4 longtime educators bringing our diverse experiences to the table.
We're harnessing all the energy of popping into your teacher bestie's classroom and bringing it straight to your ears.
let's get poppin' with today's problem of practice.
You're launching into today's math lesson and have just put the first problem up on the board. 32 plus 15...
47!
A shout comes from across the room. Yes, you respond, but remember, please raise your hand. You put up the next problem. 46 plus 22.
68!
There they are again. You put up the next problem while staring the student down. You know, it doesn't matter what subject, what time of day, or what expectations you have set, because you've got a full-fledged blurter on your hands. How do you handle the blurter in your classroom in a way that supports both them and the rest of the class? And most importantly, your sanity. So I know we all have experienced the blurter before. Those interjections that
Tough. Those are tough.
crawl up under our skin. And so I thought we'd kick off today by talking about the maybe wildest blurter you've ever had.
Okay, I'll start. So I think we all think of a blurter as happening like during our lesson, which is like what, our
What
example
Erin
was.
just did to me.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not just during the lessons, going on into other times during the day. So during work time. So I had a student, we're gonna call him Jimmy, came off as if he didn't know what he was doing, but very much did know what he was doing. So like we would be working, all the kids would be silent, and he would yell across the room to another student to get him a pencil, like screaming, I need a pencil! And I'm like, why did you yell across the room? And he'd be like, I think I maybe yelled across the room. And I was like, no.
You definitely yelled across
No,
the room.
we did. We all heard you. Maybe? And I'm like,
Is this small child trying to gaslight you? It feels like gaslighting.
yes.
I don't think
Yes.
that's cool.
You didn't hear that. You're like, did I hear that?
Well, and then I'm like,
Wait, you're looking at another kid? Like,
Wait, did that happen?
Did you hear that?
and I'm like, what are you talking about? Of course you did that. And then, this kid would come back from the bathroom, screaming that like his butt was itchy after he like,
Excellent.
but again, coming in, all the kids are working and he'll
silently
scream, my butt's itchy, when he came in.
And then how did you handle that after you laughed out loud in his face?
Well, then we're all stunned in silence. So I'm like, what is going on? But
I'm surprised another kid wasn't like, me too!
well, no, because then the other kids would get so frustrated with him because they were working or he wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing. He needed so much of my attention and got a lot of it in a negative way because I'm like, okay, I'm sorry that your butt's itchy, but like you need to go like wipe it more. Like you can't come in the classroom like
nurse, go to the nurse.
Oh my god. So he was in full control of his actions, but like he would do it anyway, and the kids got so frustrated with him, and so did I. It was hard. It was hard.
It's a lot of off top. Like, I had a blurter who was, we'll say Tucker, but Tucker's deal was that he really tended to say a lot of really tangential, technically sometimes accurate, sometimes not accurate, like facts that related, but weren't really related. So we'd be talking in like, the water cycle, and he'd be like, did you know that like the Roman Empire used rocks to blah 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 blah? And I was like, what like, but he's always trying to one up. Well, he's always trying to like one up or like show that he was smarter, and he like had these little like mischievous like eyebrows, and he'd give you this little like look around, being like, hey, like than everyone else. And I was like, this isn't helpful. But the hard part was like sometimes
He was
like,
wrong.
Well, sometimes he was full wrong.
I was gonna say
like didn't want to be corrected, and then other times was full right. But the moment you shared that was the worst moment possible. And now kids are like talking about that, and they're off topic, and they're not there, and then they're
They
like
want to know how
super
they pooped in
confused.
ancient
Right.
Rome because of the water.
Was there butt itchy?
Right,
Source
exactly.
systems,
What did they do about itchy butts? Yeah.
Right.
Did he correct you a lot?
Was there a lot of like
it was like
going on?
interesting because it was blurting to like again, but it was like blurting out facts. So it was like again trying to one up more than like full correct. Or sometimes there'd be the occasional like, ooh, I don't really think, and I'm like, it doesn't really matter what you feel like. These are the facts right now that we're dealing with. Like,
I had a 4th grade teacher who like called me out on like chatting during her lesson, and she was like, "Well,
you chatting during lesson?"
And she was like, "Well, if you know it so well, come up here and teach the class."
And young Joe was like,
and I was like, "Yeah, assignment accepted." But then I got up there and like clearly didn't know what to do and like sat down in shame. I still remember it, and she was a great teacher. So there's no shade against her. Like it was actually a really great teaching experience. But
so I actually did that to this kid, but like he doesn't have any social prowess to like know. Like you got to get off the stage, don't actually know. The sense of like embarrassment didn't really exist.
Oh no.
So I think that's where it was really hard because like all the kids would get really frustrated too because they just knew that it was like. They were like, "Shut up! We know you're smarter. Like,
right.
Like, stop saying that." And you're like,
"You've proven it. Thank you. Moving on."
Except for not really. Do you know what I mean? That's where, like, as an adult, you're like, "Ooh, you're not actually really there." You're like, "Just left to center."
he's just like one of those kids who's like, he's loud and wrong, so everyone's like, "Yeah, we get it."
Right.
I get it. No, I had a kiddo who like could keep the blurting in check most of the time, which was great for me. Because like when things were the way they were supposed to go, he was fine. When something like threw off our day or any like difference came up, he was like, "All right, here's my time to shine, man." So like the superintendent was doing walkthroughs with the principal, came into my classroom.
As they do.
Just
that
for,
one time you see them all
just
year.
for like a fun pop by. And this kiddo just like stood up and was like, "Hey, Superintendent Falcon," not his name, but what he thought. And I was like, "Oh Lord, please don't say what you're about to say." We were going through like teacher negotiation contract land at the time, and he was like, "So why don't you want to pay our teachers more? Because like Miss Cuss is really great." And I was like, "No, what? Please sit down." He like put me on a weird spot where I was like talking about.
Are you discussing negotiations with the children?
I was like,
my God.
"Hey, bud, I don't think now's the time. Why don't we show Superintendent the math we're working on actually that I'm teaching you, not our teacher contracts. You crazy?"
Oh my God.
That's pretty wild.
He was also the kid who during recess one day took a cardboard box he found in the recycling and like made a sign that was essentially like, "Pay the teachers more," and walked around the playground with it. So he really
sign this kid up.
Right.
Right.
He was really pro-union.
If you're gonna be a blurter, right? A pro-union blurter. I mean, you found him.
So yeah, he was fun because they wouldn't happen all the time, but when they happened, they were like, "Oh my."
He went there.
Spontaneous curveballs.
So my blurter, the first thing I think of when I think of this blurter is the Coffee Talk sketch on SNL, because she had that kind of like Coffee Talk voice.
Oh no!
Did you get her to say sweater weather?
She was like, she was like, it's kind of like stream of consciousness. It was like whatever is going on in her brain at the moment. So like, one day, some kid was like having a hard time. "Why is he crying over there? Why is he crying? Now he's under the table. Why is he under the table? Noah, get out from under the table." Like it was, it was like just like exactly what she was thinking. And then we had like a class congress in this class, and again, just like her debating other people in this tone about like, if we should have a movie party or not. Like, who wants to watch that movie? That's for kids. We're not kids. We're 5th grade. Like,
we're not kids.
Yeah.
We're 5th graders.
Like,
excellent.
On and on. I mean,
It was basically an SNL sketch.
Oh my gosh. And like, she was super bright. And so like, kind of like Erin's student, like when she would do it during lessons, it was like sometimes something like cool, but like tangential, and like, it just kind of like sets the ship, in a different direction once that one comment is made. And yeah, I don't know. I loved her, and it also drove me absolutely insane. So, I think when we think about blurting, I as funny as these students and stories are, I think it is important that we like frame that not all blurting is the same. And in some ways, it all comes down to a skill gap. And if we frame this through the CASTLE frameworks, which, most folks know are sort of the big, 5 social emotional areas. So we've got self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship building, and responsible decision-making. Blurting can be a sign of a deficit, right? In a skill gap in any one of those areas. And when we think about how do we help it, we're thinking about, well, how do we help close that gap, or what teaching needs to occur? So I think when we think maybe about Priyana's student, it's some students might blurt because they're craving attention or connection.
They really want everybody to know that their butt's itchy.
They do. And they're lacking that relationship building, right? They don't know how to express that in a more appropriate way, get all eyes on them in more pro-social behaviors, right? Others are incredibly bright, and they might know the answer immediately, but they lack that social awareness to realize that they're dominating the conversation, not really giving their peers a chance,
Or that their fun fact is not
right. It's taking
not
us in
fun.
a different direction, and that sounds more like Erin's Erin's student. And for some, blurting comes from a struggle with self-management. They might be overwhelmed by other thoughts and emotions, and that kind of spill out impulsively during class time.
Oh, like negotiating teacher salaries when the superintendent pops by?
That could be, and
He was
and then
definitely overwhelmed by a thought or an emotion there.
sure, he felt very passionately about us getting more money, which
I appreciate
Yep.
it.
we're all there for that.
Maybe not the time or place, but I appreciate it.
And then of course, I think there's ADHD, right? And students with ADHD often experience challenges with behavioral inhibition. And we're actually going to talk a little bit more about Dr. Russell Barkley's work because he's really studied that, and it offers some interesting insights. But for context, the student I shared about, Coffee Talk, did have ADHD, and that was definitely part of her story. So this is all just to say that when we're talking about blurting, we're really talking about a spectrum of needs, and the more we understand what's behind it, the better we can address it in the classroom. So let's take a quick dive into some of the research because I think it's very easy for us to say the kid knows what they're doing, or we've gone over the expectations, or we keep practicing this, and it starts to get pretty frustrating from the teacher side of things. So I think to think about where it's actually coming from is helpful. So one of the most, again, kind of respected voices in this space is Dr. Russell Barkley, who spent decades studying ADHD and self-regulation. And he describes blurting as a breakdown in behavioral inhibition. And that's our brain's ability to stop and delay an impulsive response. He says that skill is the brakes of the brain. And for students with ADHD, who are lagging in these self-regulation skills, those brakes are like when I take my car to the mechanic every time and he says, you need new ones, $1,000, right? He says, are you an aggressive driver? I say no, but every time, right? So, that brake system of the brain. And he says what's fascinating is that when the brakes don't work properly, that inhibition, it disrupts something even bigger, which is our executive functioning system, right? Which obviously is our brain's control center for working memory, emotional regulation, and planning ahead.
When we think about these kids who are blurters, yep.
Right, I think, when I think of that, my student, it's she also had the messiest desk, the craziest backpack. She was losing the homework all the time. Those other signs of executive function issues that actually blurting is connected to that, according to all of this research. So I think what this means is a student might know the rule is to raise their hand. They might even want to follow that rule, right? They know that, like, if I follow that rule, like, the teacher will think well of me, like, they know the ramifications. But in that split second, that braking system, it just doesn't kick in, right? And so they literally can't pause long enough to, like, access that, plan, or remember that rule, or stop that urge to speak, right? Because the inhibition wasn't there. And so, I think we all know that, like, blurting isn't just rudeness or defiance, but this really, like, confirms it, and I think it helps frame it in such a way that if we're thinking about, okay, how do we add in that pause and help support that to, help this go better, right, for both the student and the rest of the class. And so with that, I'd love to hear what has worked for all of you. I can say, for me, the quiet thumb, right, which is like, again, for those out there who might not have used it, it's, when you know the answer, put up a quiet thumb. And so they can still tell you, they know it immediately, right, for that student who needs you to know they were first, or they got it. And, we try to say, like, the quiet thumb just, like, sits on your chest, but you definitely have that kid then who's still, like, waving it in your hand. But that's still silent, and it's less disruptive than the blurting. So I always like the quiet thumb just as a way to try to give everyone think time and get that blurter to take that pause, that they have something to do instantly.
Right.
That's not blurting. And then for that, my student, one thing that actually did work was trying to raise her self-awareness of, like, when this was happening, when she was blurting out this stream of consciousness stuff. And so what we did was put a little sticky note on her desk, and we would tally all the times it happened.
Oh, no.
And it started with me and, like, a classroom assistant, like, walking by her desk and just putting the mark down once she had blurted. And then eventually, like, we moved it to her. And, like, she started to catch when she was doing it.
And how many times was the initial?
Maybe we filled a whole sticky.
Sure, yeah.
For sure. And it was never about, like, when we then eventually started setting goals. Like, how low can we get it, right? And it was never, it was like a game.
Yeah.
It was never about getting it to 0.
No.
It was never about, like, if you get more than 10, you're missing recess. It was
Right,
never punitive, but it was to help her recognize when she was doing it and
her awareness.
actively work to, get it down. And obviously, like, tons of praise when she, like, finally got it under 10 per day. I mean, and even I think I even told her, like, it might never be 0, and, like, that's okay. Like, we're making progress, you're becoming more aware of it, and it really did help. It just made it visual.
I was gonna say, I'm sure just having that visual there helps with, like, the inhibition.
Right,
Like,
giving that
it's
thought.
like,
Yeah.
not even putting the tally mark down, but, like, just seeing that sticky note on her desk, being like, oh, I have to think about that.
Right. I have to stop. And then once she can stop, she knows the rule. She knows, like,
Right.
she knows all those other pieces, and that would have worked really well.
Right, it's awesome.
I like it. So I tried doing the like, silent thumb, or doing, like, the raise your hand, but my student would just, like, vigorously do it and say like, it just always came simultaneously. So I actually tried doing Post-its in a different way. I actually had him write out, which I understand for grade level, like 5th grade, it's a lot easier to write out your thoughts like that. But, like, after getting, especially if it's, like, warm-ups or, like, practice problems, like, after you have the answer, like, write out that idea, that fun fact, that something out. And then eventually we kind of had, like, a little, like, Post-it swap, which actually kind of helped me, because I was like, clearly there are some measures where enrichment or challenge needs to happen, but, like, it gave a direction to go in. Like, you're really interested in that. There's actually some really cool books that you could read on your own time about that, or, like, kind of gave me, like, more insight. And then I really tried to do a lot of that, and then having a moment where you could, like, share with a partner or a smaller group first. So, like, after that initial, thumbs up, people have it, like, I need you to share with someone. Because it was also acknowledging that, like, there's a lot of the social awareness we don't have, but also that it is socially driven. Like, really wanted acknowledgement for being cool or small. Right, but again, I want it to be in a positive way, so that you're not getting acknowledgement of, like, we get you're smarter, shut up. Like,
right. And you can't always call on, you know, like, I think what what I ended up doing, I'm sure this is probably true for all of us, like, the blurter finally, you get them to raise their hand, have like a little bit of inhibition, and you call on them first because you know, like,
if you don't, they're
gonna blurt, and so you end up calling on them at a much higher rate than anybody else, which like still isn't, you know, that's not good either.
Right.
And then especially if they're still coming out with like sort of tangential stuff that's not actually the question you asked, you're not like totally solving that problem either. So I like the idea of them, you know, if they've shared it with a partner, they've shared it with someone, and then if I don't call on them, I feel like I already gave them an opportunity, and so I feel okay, even if they're jumping out of their chair, not doing it.
And the feedback loop that, like, I wanted this kid to actually have some friends. Like, I think you actually have a lot of cool, interesting things that you know and are fascinated by, and other kids just aren't hearing that because of the way in which you're delivering that information.
Right.
So, like, how can we get you to deliver it in a way that other kids can actually hear? Because, like, you're a cool kid. You got, like, some fun stuff. You just, when it comes out really awkward, especially towards that middle school level, kids don't hear you.
Right. So I think for my blurter, it's not so much like Joe and Aaron's during the lesson itself. It was during work time. So those strategies, well, great.
Right.
Don't work during work time. So I had to set like a clear expectation and give a clear consequence to the actions of this child. So, you know, I would explain to him the expectation before work time would begin. You need to, you know, and part of his thing was he wanted to get attention so he didn't have to do the work. Not that the work was hard, but it was so easy for him that he didn't want to do it. So, you know, a clear expectation with him, this is what you need to be doing right now. The natural consequence for him was that he needed to do the work during work time, and if he didn't do it during work time, he was going to have to do it during another time, which was recess or something, to make up what he didn't do during that time. So there was a natural consequence with that too. So missed a lot of recess. I missed a lot of like choice time and fun things that were happening in our classroom because he wasn't doing it. But we, you know, by the end of the year, we got down to missing one recess a week and still missing some of that work time. But, you know, we made it down significantly.
This is like, for me as a teacher, I need to keep reminding myself that those blurters are coming from skill gaps, because I am the teacher where like I care so much about getting through the curriculum and making sure I'm giving the kids all the knowledge I can in the short amount of time I have them. So I'd be the teacher who like, I'll skip that SEL lesson so I can fill in another science lesson, or I'll skip like morning meeting this day. I'll cut that down to 2 minutes because like I know this.
So many morning
I know this math lesson is really important. Like, and this is for like teachers. You need to keep reminding yourself that like teaching them the SEL stuff, giving them that information on how to build those very important life skills of self-management and regulation and building relationships is so important, and not to skip that. And it starts with the whole class, obviously, doing those whole class lessons on how to, you know, manage your emotions when you're feeling frustrated or really feeling like you need to say something right now. And then also making the time to meet with the individual kids who need those boosters, who need that time. So it's really, you know, the explicit teaching of the competencies and not giving those up for other things that you might feel are more important. So it's a reminder for myself as well as anybody else who's in that same boat.
And I'm going to say this kid challenged me. It's not just for the blurter. It's also for all the other kids in class. Because like I said, there is a real negative feedback loop of like the shut-ups and the this and the I'm so annoyed. The
eye roll.
And the nonverbal language of frustration. So I had to take a lot of time to like teach kids how to have feedback language when you're frustrated with someone. And like what's actually appropriate, where's the line, and also like keeping your tone in mind. Because even once we got to places where people would be like, that's a really interesting fact, and you're like, oh God, no, can't say it that way.
A little spicy.
Yeah, well, sure. Yeah. But it's one of those, like, keep your tone in mind. Like, don't cut someone short when you're not really sure where they're going or how it relates. Like, you might not understand in advance. So, like, how do you really, again, it's those social skills that other kids also don't have when they're frustrated by a blurter.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've had like a whole class shouting like, raise your hand!
Yes.
You know, at
Yeah.
a kid.
Because
who-
they're so frustrated.
Yeah.
They're frustrated.
I mean, if you think about it, like they're living in this space with this person, 6 hours a day,
Yeah.
right? They don't even get a break from them at specials or
Right.
lunch like we do.
Right, we do.
So, I mean, I get it, all right? I get it for sure. So, I think those are all really good suggestions. It starts with some of that explicit teaching, and it then, if needed, there has to be some kind of logical next steps and consequence so that it helps build that awareness of what's going on. We've got to think about everybody else and also support that student individually and thinking about things we can do either with the individual, like the stickies, or as a whole class routine, like more turn and talk, so that we're giving them opportunities to fill that skill gap, whether it's more on the self-management side or if it's more on the relation building side. All right. Well done, everybody. We solved it. All right. That's it.
You're welcome.
Blurting is
It's gonna go away now.
blurting is solved. It's solved, everyone. We solved it.
All right, well, thank you for popping by MeaningFueled today. Remember, we're here for you anytime. Our door is always open. You can visit our website at getmeaningfueled.com for ideas and inspiration to bring to your classroom.
Follow us at Get MeaningFueled on Instagram, TikTok, Blue Skies, and Threads, and just MeaningFueled on Facebook.
You can share your thoughts on this week's problem of practice
Wait, but I have something to say.
by commenting, so you should get it right in there, just please write it down, as Aaron said. Comment on any of our posts this week on social media or on the full-length episode over on YouTube.
And remember, you can send us your own pops for us to discuss with a DM or at getmeaningfueled@gmail.com.